Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not drifting off in a Victorian sickbed, nor waiting for your number in a war ration queue. No, tonight you've chosen freedom, adventure, the open plains. You wanted to be an outlaw, which is a shame because it comes with a high chance of ending with your horse dying under you, your name misspelled on a wanted poster, and your body half eaten by coyotes. So before we begin this long, dusty journey through spoiled beans, infected bullet wounds, and the steady unravelling of your legend, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you listen to these stories in bed, consider using a pair of wireless sleep earbuds for enhanced immersion. They're comfortable, discreet, and made for side sleepers. I've linked my favourite pair in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You're 27, sunburnt, underfed, and still pretending that honest work might one day buy you something more than a pair of ruined boots and a sore back. You've been a ranch hand, a rail layer, a mule handler, a man with just enough muscle and just little enough pride to be hired wherever the job is filthy and the pay late. You've sweated through 3 summers driving cattle and frozen through 2 winters hammering track into a land that doesn't want you on it. The closest thing you have to a skill is not quitting when your hands bleed. But even that's not enough. Not here. The foreman doesn't like you. Maybe it's the way you speak or the way you don't. Maybe it's the fact you dared to remind him that the fence post he told you to replace yesterday was already fixed. You thought you were being helpful. You were wrong. He spits near your boot and tells you to clear off before sundown. If you're still on the ranch by nightfall, the dogs will get a turn. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. You've seen those dogs work. They'll leave just enough of you behind to send back to your mother, if you had one still living. You don't argue. You don't beg. You just walk. You pack your bedroll, your rusting revolver, your tin cup, and a few coins that wouldn't buy you more than a stale biscuit. You leave before the sun even touches the hills. No one says goodbye. The dogs don't bark. You doubt anyone notices. By the time you reach town, your boots are filling with dust and your lips are dry. You walk into the saloon not expecting warmth. Just a place to sit and maybe a drink, if you can talk your way around your debts. The bartender stares at you, like you've soiled the floor just by breathing on it. You know that look. You've worn it yourself once when a dying man tried to lean on you for support. You're not getting credit. You're not getting served. You're not getting anything except a nod toward the door. You sleep under a cart behind the livery that night. You lie flat on your back, staring up at the stars like they owe you an explanation. Your coat isn't warm enough. The wind cuts through the seams. You hear rats behind the barrels and pray they stay uninterested in your toes. You try to think of a plan, but nothing comes. You've worked every job worth having in this place. The mine's laid off. The railroad moved east. The ranches are run by men who'd rather starve their cattle than pay another hand. You could walk to the next town, but that means 20 miles through scrubland without a horse, without food, and without a reason to think anything would be different there. In the morning, you drag yourself out of the dirt, brush off what dignity you have left, and wander back into town because it's the only place with walls. You loiter outside the general store long enough for the owner to glare at you through the window. You check your coin pouch. $3 and change. Not enough for a train ticket, not enough for supplies. You spend a dime on a biscuit that tastes like chalk and another on the worst coffee you've ever had. That leaves you with $2 and hope. The coffee doesn't last. The hope runs out before noon. You drift back into the saloon for the shade. You know they won't serve you, but the piano's missing keys don't judge, and the broken bar stools don't care who sits on them. You stand against the wall, like you've got somewhere better to be, and that's when you hear them. 2 men sitting at the back table talking in the kind of low drawl that's meant to sound casual, but lands like a dare. One's wearing a coat that was probably military once, though it's lost the buttons and half the blue. The other's got the teeth of a mule that's been kicked too often and eyes that blink too slow. They look like they've either just committed a crime or are about to. You don't stare, but you don't look away either. You're hungry enough to take an interest in anything. Pays in silver, one of them says, dragging a biscuit through something that might be beans or just brown water. Tanner don't short his men, long as you don't shoot stupid and keep your mouth shut. You lean a little closer without moving your feet. You're not subtle, and you don't need to be. They're speaking loud enough to be heard. That's not by accident. They want someone to overhear, someone desperate. You must fit the part because the one with the mule teeth turns toward you. You got a question, friend? You shrug. You said something about work. He grins like he's heard it all before, and maybe he has. You got a horse? No. Can you shoot? If I have to. That's not a lie, but it's not the truth either. You fired a gun, yes, but never at a man, and certainly never with the kind of steadiness that comes from practice. Still, they nod. That's all the interview you get. Meet up with us tonight, the other one says. We ride out near dusk. If you slow us down, we leave you. Tanner don't keep cripples. You thank them. They don't respond. You spend the afternoon pretending to prepare. Truth is, there's nothing to pack. Everything you own fits in a single bedroll. Your coat, your cracked belt knife, your dented tin cup, and a half-empty tobacco pouch with more dust than leaf. You walk to the general store and spend the last of your coins on a biscuit so dry it might crack a tooth. It still tastes better than hunger. When dusk comes, you meet them behind the saloon. They don't speak. They hand you a horse, not yours, not good, but alive, and you mount up. The saddle's worn smooth and the reins are fraying. You don't ask where you're going. You already know, somewhere outside the law. The ride out of town is quiet. No one watches you leave. No one stops you. The sheriff doesn't care. The preacher doesn't notice. And the storekeeper probably hopes you don't come back. You look over your shoulder once, not because there's anything behind you worth remembering, but because you want to be the kind of man who marks where he's been. It feels like the right thing to do. Then you face forward again and stop pretending. You ride through the night, then through the morning. The sun rises pale and unforgiving. The landscape stretches out in every direction, dry and skeletal. The air smells like heat and old bones. Your thighs ache from the saddle. Your lips split from the wind. You chew the biscuit slowly, rationing it like it's something sacred. The men you're riding with don't speak much. When they do, it's in fragments. One tells a story about a job that went bad, a bank with a locked safe, a teller who turned out to be a preacher's son, a gang member who panicked and shot someone's hat off. The other laughs like he's trying to remember what being amused feels like. You don't ask questions, you just listen. You don't need the details to know the kind of men you're with. They've made peace with their choices or buried the part of themselves that didn't. That night, you sleep on rock with your coat for a blanket and your hat pulled low to block the stars. You're so tired your bones hurt. The air gets cold, then colder. One of the men offers you a strip of jerky. It tastes like salt and regret. You thank him anyway. It's the first thing anyone's given you in weeks. As you drift off to sleep, you don't feel fear. Not exactly. It's something closer to resignation. You've already left the life you had behind. You just haven't figured out what comes next. In the morning you mount up again. Your horse wheezes when it breathes. Your hands shake. The wind has picked up, and it blows grit into your teeth. You ride in silence, thinking about all the things you used to want. A real bed, a hot meal, someone waiting for you. Now, all you want is to not fall off the horse before sunset. You tried honest work. It didn't want you. Now you're riding toward a man who pays in silver and doesn't care about your name. You'll take it. For now, that's enough. You ride for 3 days before you meet the rest of them. The sun is already dropping behind the ridge when you and the two men, you never ask their names, guide your horses down into a low gulch filled with scrub, ash, and the sickly smell of smoke. There's a small fire burning between two rocks, and around it, the gang. 6 men and 1 boy, who looks about 16, though the lines on his face make him seem older. They're chewing dried meat, spitting into the dust, and muttering about the wind. None of them bother to stand up when you approach. No greetings, no names. Just a glance at your boots and your face, like they're measuring how much you'll weigh when they have to bury you. Tanner doesn't introduce himself. You only figure out which one he is because everyone else stops talking when he clears his throat. He's broad, slouched and grey-eyed, with a face that looks like it was carved from old rope. He doesn't ask your name either. He asks if you've ever ridden at night, if you've ever fired a gun, if you're the kind of man who panics when blood shows up in the wrong place. You say yes to the first 2 and no to the last. You're lying, but that seems to be the rule here, not the exception. He tosses you a revolver that's seen better centuries. The chamber sticks, the trigger's loose, it smells like damp sulphur. He says you'll earn a better one when you prove you can use it. Then he points to a scrawny bay horse tied to a mesquite tree. Your new mount, the one you rode here, was just temporary. Its ribs show through the hide, and one eye weeps yellow mucus. It looks like it's praying to be shot. You name it nothing, mostly to save yourself the trouble of remembering later. Your first night with the gang is spent listening. You learn fast that they talk only when they're not working, and even then, only about the job. Who's got the maps? Which ranchers are drunk? Which sheriff's away visiting his sister? They don't tell stories. They don't reminisce. You don't hear a single mention of family or sweethearts, or where anyone came from. You get the sense that names are things they shed like snakeskins, left behind in towns where people scream your description to a deputy on horseback. You're expecting something dramatic, a train job, a saloon stick-up, a stagecoach robbery where someone leaps off the roof and fires 2 pistols at once. But what Tanner lays out is much duller, and somehow worse. Cattle rustling, middle of the night, 50 head from a ranch west of town, run by a man with too many acres and not enough hands. It doesn't sound glamorous, it sounds like work. You didn't come here to chase cattle. You left that job behind. But no one asks your opinion, and you don't offer one. The plan is simple. One half of the gang cuts the fence. The other half drives the herd out through the dry creek bed and up into the hills before the ranch dogs smell the difference. If anyone wakes up, you fire over their heads. Only over, no bodies. Tanner says that last part twice. You spend the day pretending to sleep. The boy is sharpening a knife beside you. The blade's already sharp, but he keeps working it like he's trying to scrape something invisible off the steel. You want to ask him how long he's been with them, what his name is if he's scared. But you don't. You just close your eyes and try not to think. Night falls without a sound. The moon is a thin smear above the rocks. You ride in silence, nothing limping slightly, but keeping pace. The revolver hangs heavy on your hip. Your mouth is dry. You haven't eaten since morning, and the jerky turned your gums raw. The man riding beside you, they call him Rabbit, though he looks more like a corpse that forgot to lie down, keeps muttering something under his breath. You don't ask what. It sounds like a prayer, but it could just as easily be a recipe for poison. When you reach the fence, everything happens too quickly and too slowly. One man cuts the wire with a rusted set of pliers. Another whistles low, and the cattle begin to shift. They don't stampede, they just move, reluctant and slow, like they know they're not meant to. You ride beside them, waving your arms, clicking your tongue, doing everything short of shouting to keep them moving in the right direction. One turns back, another bolts. You chase them both, heart pounding, half aware that you've now wandered away from the others. Then you hear the shot. You jolt in the saddle and yank your horse around, nearly losing your balance. For a moment, your chest seizes, the kind of full-body panic that tells you someone's seen you. Someone's aiming. Someone's already lining up the second round. You fumble for your revolver, tugging it free even though you're not sure which chamber still fires. You duck low against the horse's neck, scanning the ridge, the rocks, the dark. But no one's shooting at you. Then you hear the scream. High, sharp, panicked, not angry, not wounded in a fight, just terrified. You turn your horse and urge it through the scrub, past the edge of the cattle herd, where one of the boys, the youngest, is on the ground, screaming and gripping his thigh. His horse stands nearby, reins dangling. The revolver he was holding lies in the dust. From the way he's sobbing, the blood pouring through his fingers, and the shape of the wound, it's clear what happened. He shot himself. Through the leg. Probably while trying to look brave. Rabbit is already kneeling beside him, muttering curses and tearing a strip of cloth from his own sleeve. You sit there on your horse, unsure whether to get down or ride away, until Rabbit looks up and says, through and through, but he won't be walking for a while. Then quieter, Tanner's not going to carry him. You don't need him to explain. A minute later, Tanner rides up, glances down, spits once and says, leave him. If he's smart, he'll crawl somewhere quiet. Then he wheels his horse around like it's a closed matter. You hesitate, just long enough for Rabbit to look up and frown. Don't, he says. Tanner's right. Ain't no place to carry dead weight. You want to argue, you don't. You walk away. As you round the rocks back toward the herd, you almost step on a rattlesnake. It lunges before you can move, sinks its fangs into the leg of the man walking ahead of you, a tall one with a scar like a hook down his cheek. He screams and stomps, manages to crush the thing's head with a rock, but he's already pale and swaying. No one stops for him either. He limps off into the dark, muttering about whiskey and fate. By the time the herd reaches the hills, you've lost one man to stupidity and another to venom. The rest of you look like you've spent the night digging graves. Your hands are blistered. Your mouth tastes like copper. One of the cows dies halfway up the slope from heat or fright, or maybe just spite. You shoot it. Tanner tells you to do it, and you do. The shot echoes across the valley. You flinch. No one else does. At sunrise, you reach the camp. Not the same gulch you started from, but another just like it, with even less shade. You sit by the fire and wait for Tanner to speak. He counts the herd, nods, says nothing about the two you lost, says nothing about the shot, says only, we'll move again tomorrow, rest up. No one cheers, no one smiles. One man opens a tin of beans and eats them cold. Another lies flat on the ground and stares at the sky. You stare too, trying to remember why you thought this would be better than starving in town. You thought being an outlaw meant quick money, fast horses, women who liked danger. Instead, you've got sunburn, a horse with a limp, and the memory of a boy crying for his mother while the blood soaked through his pants. That night, you lie beside the fire, gun tucked under your arm, stomach turning from whatever meat Rabbit tried to cook. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but all you can see is the boy's face. Not scared, not angry, just confused, like he thought someone was coming back for him. You survive your first job, barely. No one congratulates you. You're not even sure it counts. There was no gold, no shootout, no lawman to outwit, just cattle, dust, screams, and a gun that doesn't fire quite right. You roll over onto your side, press your hat down low, and try to forget what it felt like to walk away. This life, you realise, won't be fast, it won't be clean, and it certainly won't be glorious. It's just going to be long, and hard, and cold. The cattle are gone by morning, moved further into the hills by someone else, someone you never meet. You don't ask where they're taken or what happens next. You assume the animals will be sold to a crooked buyer with no questions and fewer morals, but it doesn't concern you now. You're told to ride, so you ride. The job's done. The blood's washed off mostly. The boy who shot himself is still back there somewhere. No one brings him up. The man who got bit by the rattler isn't mentioned either. That too becomes someone else's problem. You ride into the hills, higher and rougher than you expected. The landscape twists around itself, all scrub and stone and switchbacks. The path isn't marked, and the trail is narrow enough that the horse's hooves slide with every step. It takes hours to climb to wherever Tanner's leading you. No one speaks. Even the horses are too tired to snort. You keep your eyes on the saddle in front of you, your mind blank, trying not to imagine what kind of hideout needs to be this well hidden. When you arrive, you're not sure what you're looking at. There's no cabin, no shack, no structure of any kind, just a rocky slope, half covered in brush and dust, with a few sun-bleached bones nearby, goat maybe, or something smaller. Then one of the others dismounts, walks straight toward the slope, pulls back a curtain of scrub, and disappears into the hillside. One by one they follow him. You hesitate, then tie off your horse and step through. The cave is deeper than it looks from outside. Damp air hits your face as you stoop to avoid the low entrance. The space widens after a few steps, revealing a hollow packed with the stink of unwashed men, wet leather, and something that might once have been stew. The floor is uneven dirt, littered with broken crates, discarded boots, and a few rat-bitten blankets. Smoke curls up from a rock-ringed fire in the middle, making your eyes sting even before the smell does. This is it. This is where outlaws sleep. There are no bunks, no cots, just bedrolls thrown over the least uneven patches of ground. A small cache of supplies, tins, dried meat, rancid coffee, sits near the back, beside what might be an old mining pick or just a rusted tool someone forgot to bury. No lanterns, no whiskey, no deck of cards. You'd imagined outlaws sitting around a table, dealing hands and passing a bottle, laughing like devils between jobs. But the men here look like they've forgotten how to laugh. They barely look at each other. One spits blood into the fire. Another rubs something out of his beard, and then eats it. You pick a spot near the wall. It smells less terrible there, though you suspect the distinction is imaginary. Your coat sticks to your back. Your knees pop as you sit. No one tells you the rules, but they don't need to. Don't take someone else's food. Don't talk unless you're spoken to. Don't ask what happened to the last man who slept in that spot. These things are all communicated in the way they glance at you, briefly, with a kind of tired suspicion, like they're not sure if you're going to steal their things or die in your sleep and make a mess of the place. Tanner disappears somewhere deeper into the cave with one of the older men. You think about following but stop yourself. You don't want to know what goes on further in. You just want to make yourself small and unremarkable, like a shadow nobody bothers to notice. Rabbit tosses a tin can into the fire. The metal hisses, and he fishes it out a few minutes later with a rag and a stick. He hands it to you without looking. "Beans," he says. "They taste like gun oil and mildew. You eat them anyway." The night is worse. The older man, the one with the hollow cough, sleeps near the fire. You don't know his name, but you've started calling him Red in your head, on account of the beard. Around midnight, he starts hacking like his lungs are trying to flee his body. Every time you think he's finished, he starts again. The coughing comes wet and deep, with pauses long enough to give you hope, followed by a noise that sounds like someone drowning in mud. No one helps. No one even looks up. You lie awake, staring at the cave roof, listening to rats scurry along the walls. Someone snores loud enough to shake dust from the rocks. Someone else mutters in their sleep. The fire dies, and with it, the illusion of warmth. You wrap your coat tighter, but it doesn't help. The cold in this place isn't normal. It's not the kind that stings or bites. It's the kind that settles in your bones and stays there. The cold of wet rock, old sickness, and years of breath that never left. In the morning, Red is still coughing. He spits blood into a rag and tucks it under his saddlebag, like it's a family secret. His hands tremble when he pours his coffee. No one comments. You don't ask. If he dies, they'll either bury him or leave him in the back of the cave and pretend it's not their business. You're not sure which is more likely. You help carry water from a spring half a mile down the slope. The bucket leaks, your boots slip, your legs ache. When you get back, one of the others, you think they call him Clay, is scraping lice out of his boots with a fork. He holds the fork up like it's a trophy. You try not to react. He offers you the same fork when it's time to eat, as you pretend you've already got one. No one talks much, and when they do, it's usually in short-clipped fragments about things that don't matter. Someone mentions that the stew smells worse than usual. Someone else swears the beans were spoiled before they were canned. No one says what you're all waiting for, but you can feel it. That heavy, restless pause between jobs where no one wants to be the one who admits there's no plan yet. You ask Rabbit quietly, what comes next? He shrugs, says, Tanner's thinking. You don't know how long you're supposed to stay here. A day? A week? Longer? Time inside the cave is strange. There's no sun, just damp light that filters in around midday and then vanishes again. You sleep twice and think it's been 3 days. You wake with dirt in your teeth and the taste of mould in your mouth. The food stockpile gets noticeably smaller each time someone cooks. The coffee runs out on the second morning. Someone suggests chewing tobacco grounds as a replacement. You try it. It makes you dizzy and nauseous. You don't try it again. On the fourth night, or maybe the fifth, someone accuses someone else of stealing jerky. The voice echoes through the cave, loud and sharp. A scuffle breaks out. You see a knife, but it's not used, just waved. Tanner steps in, separates them, says nothing, and walks off. The tension stays. After that, people start sleeping with their weapons closer. No one shares food anymore. Rabbit moves his saddlebag when he catches you looking in its direction, even though you were only watching the fire. You start to wonder if this is actually worse than the job you had before. At least the ranch had a roof, a bunk, a routine. This is just waiting. For what, you're not sure. The next job, the next betrayal, the next man to die, coughing in the dark. You haven't bathed in days. Your fingernails are black. Your clothes smell like smoke and damp wool. You stopped shaving. You've started scratching. You don't know who you are here. You're not a criminal yet, not really, but you're no longer just a man looking for work either. You're something in between, something no one claims. At one point, you hear Tanner talking quietly with Clay just outside the cave. You creep closer, pretending to look for firewood. You catch a few words. Supply low. Sheriff might know. Can't stay much longer. Their voices drop when you move nearer. They look at you like you might be the problem, or the solution, or both. That night, you lie awake, pressed to the cold stone, staring at the slow crawl of smoke above the dying fire. Someone shifts in their sleep and mutters your name, or what they think your name is. You don't answer. You're not sure if they trust you. You're not sure if you trust them. You're not even sure what trust means here, when a man can bleed to death 2 ridges away and not one of you would turn back. You wake up one morning. It's early, maybe just past dawn, though there's no way to tell from inside the rock. You sit up slowly, your neck stiff, your spine aching from sleeping on uneven ground. Someone's pacing near the fire, boots crunching in the dust. You hear Clay spit and Tanner curse. The air smells like smoke and sweat and desperation, stronger than usual. You don't need anyone to say it out loud. You can feel it in the way they move. Something's happening. Rabbit tosses you a crust of bread and nods toward the cave entrance. Gear up, he says, chewing something that's either jerky or something that used to be jerky. We're riding out. You follow the others outside, blinking in the morning glare. The horses are already saddled. Tanner stands by the scrub line with a scrap of paper in one hand and a rifle in the other. He's scowling harder than usual, which you hadn't thought possible. When he sees you, he grunts and lifts the paper. There's a stage rolling through the canyon pass tomorrow, he says. Payroll from the mine, bound for some bank that don't need it. The paper is a rough sketch, probably copied from a map or stolen from a clerk. The route's marked in charcoal, and someone's circled a narrow bend where the canyon walls rise high and tight on either side. A perfect place for an ambush, assuming no one's expecting it. This one's real, Tanner adds. Worth it, big haul, enough to keep us in the clear for a while. You nod like you believe him, because everyone else does, or at least pretends to. Maybe they want it to be true. Maybe they've already forgotten what happened last time. You haven't. The ride out is long and hot. The sun doesn't care what you're planning. It bakes the canyon until the rocks shimmer and the dust sticks to your tongue. You don't talk much. No one does. The younger ones, what's left of them, fidget in their saddles, gripping their weapons like they're worried the metal might vanish. Red isn't with you. He's too sick to ride now, left behind in the cave to cough and waste away. No one mentions him. You reach the bend before noon and set up behind a shelf of stone that offers shade and cover. Rabbit climbs a narrow path to keep watch from above. Clay checks the rifle sights, swearing softly, with each adjustment. Tanner sits cross-legged in the dirt, eyes half closed, lips moving in silence like he's counting something. You wonder if it's bullets or exits. When the coach finally appears the next day, it's smaller than you expected. The horses are lean and overworked, their coats flecked with dust and whip marks. The driver looks like a man who hasn't slept in weeks. There's a guard beside him, just one, and a strong box chained to the floor behind them. No passengers in sight. You wait for the signal. Rabbit waves from the ridge. A sharp movement, one hand raised. That's it. Tanner nods. You rise from behind the rocks, your revolver drawn, your heart kicking against your ribs like it's trying to escape. Clay fires the first shot, not at the driver, just at the sky. The sound cracks the canyon like thunder. The horses rear. The coach lurches. The driver yells something you can't make out. Tanner rides forward, rifle raised. "Drop the reins," he shouts, "and step down." The driver hesitates. The guard doesn't. He moves to draw and Tanner shoots him off the bench before the gun even clears the holster. The body hits the ground hard. The horses bolt. Clay grabs the lead reins and hauls back, teeth clenched, trying to keep the whole rig from tipping. You move in, weapons still drawn, watching the dust for movement. The coach door bursts open and a woman climbs out screaming. She's dressed in black, bonnet and all, a preacher's wife maybe, or someone who wanted to look like one. She stumbles, trips and lands hard. You're about to step forward when another shot rings out behind you. It's not aimed, not careful, just panicked. The bullet hits her square in the chest. She falls backward without a sound, arms spread, bonnet askew. You don't know who fired. You don't ask. The silence afterward is worse than the gunfire. Tanner yells something, but it's already too late. The driver's fled. The coach is still lurching forward on the slope, half guided by Clay's desperate grip. The strong box rocks loose and falls. It splits open on a stone, empty, except for a few scraps of paper and a small bag of coins. No payroll, no gold, no salvation. "Where the hell is it?" Clay shouts, kneeling beside the box. The only answer is the wind. Tanner turns toward the dead woman. He looks at her like she's a problem to be solved, then spits and says, "Grab what you can. We're gone." You stare at her a moment longer. You want to look away, but something holds you. Maybe it's the way her hand is curled near her chest, like she was reaching for something. Maybe it's because you know, deep down, that this is what ends everything. You ride hard, faster than before, barely stopping to breathe. Tanner says nothing. Rabbit doesn't show until you're halfway back to the hills. When he catches up, his face is white. "She's dead," he says, unnecessarily. "Word'll be out before sundown." You make it to a new hiding spot. Not the cave, not anymore. Too risky. Tanner leads you to a ravine a few miles west, where you camp beneath a rock shelf and keep the fire low. Everyone's quiet. No one sleeps. You check your revolver 5 times before finally lying down. A few days later, you ride into town, alone. Tanner says someone needs to get supplies and no one else volunteers. You go because there's no excuse not to. The general store is quiet. The clerk eyes you like he's seen a ghost. You don't speak unless spoken to. You buy salt, beans, coffee, the things they said to get, and keep your head down. It's only when you walk past the post office on the way out that you see it. The paper is yellowed and uneven, nailed to the wall with a crooked tack. A wanted poster. Your face. It's not a perfect likeness. The artist gave you a stronger jaw, more menace around the eye. But it's close enough. Your name's spelled wrong, but the bounty's clear. $500, dead or alive. Beneath it, smaller, the words, "For the murder of Mrs. Esther Klein." You stare for a moment too long. A man glances at you. You walk away. That night, you tell no one what you saw. They don't ask. You're not the only one who might have been drawn on the poster. The tension in the camp is thick, heavy, twitching. Every noise makes someone flinch. Everyone's watching everyone else. The next morning, Clay is gone. So is the coin pouch from the stage. No one says it. No one admits it. But you all know what happened. He took the money and ran. Or maybe he turned himself in. Maybe he gave up. Maybe he's dead already. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're short a man and shorter on trust. Tanner doesn't bother asking if anyone wants to go after him. You suspect he already knows where Clay went, and that it's too late to follow, or too dangerous, or too pointless. You sit by the fire and stir beans that taste like metal. The others sit in silence. Someone sharpens a knife that's already sharp. Someone else digs a bullet out of the heel of their boot. You stare at the embers, wondering how long it'll take for a bounty hunter to find you, wondering what name they'll shout before they shoot. This was supposed to be the big one, the job that bought time, space, safety. But the box was empty, the guard was armed, the preacher's wife is dead, and now there's a bounty on your head for something you didn't even do. You're not famous, you're just hunted, and with every breath you take, you're worth a little more to someone else. Clay's disappearance unsettles everyone, but it's the poster that seals it. By nightfall, Rabbit comes back from a creekside errand with a nervous look and a fresh sheet of paper in his hands. More posters, more names, yours among them. This one spells it right. Says you're armed, dangerous, and wanted for robbery and murder. There's a smudge over the sketch, but it doesn't matter. Anyone who's seen your face for 5 minutes could match it. Tanner doesn't say much, just spits into the fire, snaps the map shut, and says, "Mount up." You don't ask where you're going. You already know. Anywhere but here. You ride for days, maybe longer. The sun disappears a little earlier each afternoon. The wind sharpens. You start to notice frost on your bedroll, ice forming at the edges of your canteen. No one says the word winter, but it creeps in anyway, slow and certain. The sky sags heavy with wet clouds, and when the sleet starts, it doesn't stop for 2 days. The kind that needles your face and soaks through wool. The kind that turns dust to mud and mud to swamp. You ride through it, because there's no other choice. The trails disappear under melting snow. Your boots squelch with every step, leather peeling back at the seams, like it's trying to escape your feet. The saddle sores on your thighs rub raw. You think about shifting your weight to ease the pain, but then the horse stumbles, and you forget everything else, except not falling off. No one speaks. What's there to say? You're wet, you're cold, you're wanted men. Your stomach growls loud enough to echo through the trees, but no one offers food. Tanner called this going to ground, but it feels more like being buried alive. The third night is the worst. You find a patch of pine trees dense enough to shield you from the wind, barely, and tie the horses off to roots slick with moss. Someone lights a fire with damp bark, and it smokes so thick your eyes tear up before you even get close. You chew jerky until your jaw aches and wash it down with rainwater scooped from a saddlebag lid. The warmth never really reaches your fingers. You sleep in fits. Between the cold and the coughing, you can't tell if hours pass, or none at all. When morning comes, you don't realise it until someone starts shouting. It's Merritt, the youngest now, lanky and twitchy, the one with the nervous fingers and too much energy. He's kneeling over one of the men. You think his name was Amos. You hadn't spoken more than 3 words to him. He was always behind you in the line. Quiet, never complained. Now he's frozen solid, Face grey, lips cracked and split like dry clay. His hands still curled around his coat, like he was trying to hold the heat in until the very end. No one mourns. Tanner walks over, checks his pulse even though there's no need, and pulls the coat loose. Someone else strips the gloves. Another takes the boots. You don't stop them. You don't even think to. That's just what happens now. You ride again. Slower, heavier. The cold sinks into your bones like it knows your name. You start coughing that day. Nothing much at first, just a dry tickle at the back of your throat. You ignore it. Everyone ignores it. You all smell like wet dog and rot. You all cough. It means nothing. Until it does. By the 5th day, it's more than a tickle. It rattles your ribs. You cough into your sleeve and find blood smeared on the wool. You hide it. You tell yourself it's nothing. A cracked lip. A raw throat. You lie even to yourself because the alternative is worse. Nobody says it, but you know the rule. Slow the group down and you get left behind. No exceptions. You saw what happened to the boy who shot himself. You saw what they did when Amos stopped breathing. You don't want your coat peeled off before you're cold. So you keep riding. You dig your heels into nothing's sides even when he stumbles. He's thinner than before. You can feel the bones under the saddle. The reins are stiff with frost. The saddle's stiff with dried sweat. You cough again quietly and pretend the blood wasn't there. Nights blur, days sting. Your hands go numb halfway through each ride, and you start tying the reins to your wrist so you don't drop them. You forget the taste of warm food. You forget what it's like to not ache. The others stop talking to you, not out of cruelty, just out of practicality. You're the weak link now, the one with the hollow eyes and the wheeze. You still pull your weight, but barely. They're doing the math, how long you've got, whether it's worth feeding you, how much slower the group rides when you're trying to keep up. It's not personal. None of this is. Somewhere outside a nameless settlement that doesn't show up on any map, you start falling behind. You don't say anything. You don't have the breath to spare. But the others start pulling further ahead each hour. Rabbit glances back once, just once, then rides on. You tell yourself you'll catch up. You press your knees to nothing's sides, but he's slowing too. The trail is slick with slush, the wind cutting sideways through your coat. You cough again, hard enough that your ribs seize up, and see blood on your glove when you wipe your mouth. You spit into the snow and pretend it's nothing. The horse snorts and trudges on. You ride like that for what feels like hours, alone, but not fully left behind. Just enough distance that no one has to admit they're abandoning you. Just enough distance that they don't have to hear the cough. You no longer know where they're leading you. You don't care. Every hill looks the same. Every tree leans the same way in the wind. There's no sun, just grey light, and the sound of hooves fading slowly out of reach. No one says it, but you know, you're not riding with them anymore. You're just trying to keep up long enough to not die in their wake. You don't die in the snow. That surprises you. Winter lets up slow, like it's thinking about coming back. The sleet turns to cold rain. The trees look less like skeletons and more like something that might live again. Your cough eases just enough to stop the blood. You stop tying the reins to your wrist. You start eating again, even if it's just hard biscuit and boiled pine needles. Nothing tastes good, but it stays down. You're still weaker than the rest. You ride at the back of the line. You sleep furthest from the fire. The others don't speak to you unless they have to, and you stop expecting them to. They're waiting for you to drop, and when you don't, they just act like you already did. But you ride, every day. The horse doesn't complain, and neither do you. You've both outlived your usefulness. The land flattens, the snow vanishes. You don't know what month it is anymore, but you see green again. Scraggly and grey, sure, but it's something. You pass an orchard burned down to stumps. You pass a river with a name you forgot. Sometimes you see smoke in the distance, rising from towns you don't go near. Sometimes you wonder if you're circling back through the same places again, just from a different angle. There's a hollow sameness to the dirt here, to the brush, to the sky. You expect things to settle, for a stretch of quiet. Tanner had said once that spring would give them room, whatever that meant, and you thought that maybe the worst was behind you, that you'd keep on riding until the sun warmed the stone and the blood stayed in your body. But it happens fast, like everything else in this life. You don't know who they are. Maybe Pinkertons, maybe ranchers, maybe just some men with bad luck and worse timing. Maybe someone in your group ran their mouth in the wrong town. You don't even hear the first shot. You just see Tanner jerk in the saddle and hear the sound a horse makes when it dies. Then it's chaos. The rest of the gang scatters like roaches, spurring their mounts in every direction. You follow whoever's closest, Merritt maybe, or Rabbit, hard to tell in the dust and the shouting. Bullets crack the air like lightning, sharp and close. You don't see who's shooting. You don't shoot back. You're too busy trying not to get hit. Your horse lurches left, nearly throwing you, then jumps a dead log and skids down a slope slick with gravel. You keep your feet in the stirrups, by accident more than skill. A tree branch whips across your face. You lose your hat. You lose track of the others. Then something burns across your thigh, sharp, white-hot, fast. You don't fall right away. You grab the saddle horn and grit your teeth, swearing into the wind. It's not a deep hit. You know that immediately. The shot grazed you, or maybe passed through the outer muscle. It doesn't feel like bone. Doesn't feel like something's missing. But it hurts bad, a slicing, searing pain that starts dull and then flares each time the horse moves beneath you. You guide nothing down into a dry ravine, out of sight, and finally let yourself stop. You swing one leg over, the wrong leg, and nearly collapse. The pain stabs deep, and your vision flashes white. You land hard and breathe through your teeth, keeping your hand pressed to the wound. Blood, yes, but not pouring. More of a steady leak. You sit against a rock and tear open the trouser leg. The fabric sticks, half glued by blood. When it finally peels back, you see a long, shallow channel torn through the outer edge of your thigh, clean as far as gun wounds go. It's ugly, red and raw, with angry swelling already forming, but you've seen worse. You've watched worse die, though not always quickly. You dig into the saddlebag and find the bottle of rock gut. You pour a little over the wound, and it lights your nerves on fire. You shout even though there's no one to hear it. Then you take a long drink, enough to make your stomach twist, enough to pretend it helped. You tear a strip from the inside of your coat and press it tight. It soaks through too quickly, so you add another layer, the hem of your shirt, the rag you use to wipe down the horse, anything that'll hold. You tie it all with your belt, teeth clenched the whole time. The wind picks up. The pain dulls only because your body starts tuning it out. You chew a piece of sagebrush, not because you think it'll help, but because it keeps your mouth busy. You don't want to cry out again. You stay there for a while, waiting for the shooting to stop, waiting for someone to circle back, waiting for your hands to stop shaking. No one comes. You manage to get back in the saddle. It hurts. It hurts enough to make you see stars, enough to make your head spin, but you manage. You turn the horse in a lazy circle, not even trying to track the others. You just ride slowly, away from the gunfire, through brush and rock and silence. You don't know how much time passes. The sun drops behind the hills. The air cools again. Your leg throbs with every movement. You stop twice to tighten the bandage, though it doesn't stop the sting. You think about whiskey, about sleep, about the fact that you're riding through the middle of nowhere, alone, bleeding, unwanted, and this still isn't the worst day you've had. Eventually you find a gulch with soft enough dirt to make camp. You hobble the horse and settle against a warm rock, wrapping yourself in your coat. You eat the last of your biscuit. You drink the last of the rock gut. You chew on sagebrush again, mostly to keep from clenching your teeth in pain. You stare at the stars and try not to think about what comes next. Not tomorrow, not the next job, just the next hour. You don't plan anymore. You just persist. That's all this life is now. Just long enough to reach the next place. Long enough to bleed a little less. You ride until the pain in your leg goes quiet. Not because it's healing, but because your body gives up on trying to feel it anymore. The bandage is soaked stiff and probably doing more harm than good, but you keep it wrapped tight out of fear that untying it might make things worse. The sky stays grey for 2 days. You sleep sitting upright in the saddle more than once. You can't tell if you're hungry or just hollow. The horse doesn't complain. He's too tired. You both are. Eventually, you spot a shape in the distance that doesn't belong to the landscape. Not rock, not tree. It's the corner of a roof. Then another. A few fence posts. A line of smoke from a chimney. You've found a town or something close to one. You hesitate. Towns mean people, and people mean eyes. But you don't have much choice. Your water's gone. Your thigh is a swollen, throbbing knot of pain. You can barely steer anymore, let alone aim a gun. If you keep riding, you'll die in the saddle, and you're not sure that would even be the worst end. So you ride in. It's not much. A main road made of packed dirt, one saloon, one church, a blacksmith, and maybe 6 homes in total, each leaning a little like the wind's been trying to knock them down for years. A few men sit on a bench outside the general store, chewing tobacco like it's the only thing keeping them alive. They don't look up when you pass, but you can feel them noticing you anyway. You tie nothing outside the saloon and step down. Your leg nearly gives. You catch yourself on the hitching post and suck in a breath sharp enough to make your teeth ache. One of the townsmen chuckles softly behind you. It's not a kind sound. Inside, the saloon smells like spilled whiskey, stale sweat, and boiled meat. It's almost empty. The barkeep doesn't even glance up as you limp to the counter. You ask for water. He slides a glass your way, barely making eye contact. You drink it in 2 gulps, then ask about a doctor. That gets his attention. He looks you over, the way you're standing, the way your coat hides your left leg, but can't hide the dark stain at the hem, and he squints. You drunk? No, he shrugs. Looks like you are. You don't answer. You just press a coin to the counter and ask again, more quietly this time. He sighs, nods toward the door, and tells you the doctor's place is 2 doors down from the church. Then he pauses. Daughter's the one there right now, he adds. He's out on a call. You thank him. He doesn't respond. You limp out and follow the directions, each step grinding fire through your thigh. By the time you reach the door, you're sweating despite the cold. You knock once and lean against the frame to keep from falling. The door creaks open. She can't be more than 12, pale, freckled, with sharp eyes and a mouth that's probably been set in a scowl since birth. She looks you over and frowns like you're a chore she didn't ask for. You bleeding? You nod. She lets you in. It's a small room that smells of dried herbs and dust. There's a table covered in yellowed cloth, a shelf lined with jars, and a window with the curtains drawn halfway. You sit without being told, and she sets to work without ceremony. She cuts away the old bandage with a paring knife. The skin underneath is raw and inflamed. You look away. She doesn't. You got this from falling or from doing something dumb? You don't answer. She shrugs and pours something over the wound. It stings. You grit your teeth. I'll stitch it, she says. Pa showed me how. You want whiskey first? Yes. She pours it from a jar that smells like turpentine. You take 2 gulps and hand it back. She nods in approval. The stitching is crude but quick. Her hands are steady. You close your eyes and let the pain blur the edges of the room. You're lucky, she says, as she knots the thread. Didn't hit anything important. Didn't feel lucky, she shrugs again. You're not dead. That counts. When she finishes, she packs the wound with something that smells like pine and ashes, then wraps it tight with a strip of linen. You reach for your coat and wince as you stand. You got a place to sleep, she asks. You shake your head. There's a room above the bakery, empty since the miller boy left for the war. I'll tell them to leave the door open. You don't ask what it'll cost. As you leave, you press a silver coin into her palm. It's warm from your pocket. She looks at it, then at you, then closes her fist without a word. The bakery smells like burned flour and yeast. The woman behind the counter doesn't look up when you climb the stairs. The door to the room is open, like she said. There's a bed, a blanket, a cracked basin of water. You sleep like a corpse until dawn. The knock is soft but unmistakable, not the kind you make when you want to talk, the kind you make when you want someone to come to the door so you can shoot them clean. You don't move at first, just breathe slow and shallow. Listen, another knock, then silence. You reach for your belt. Your revolver's still there. You cock it just enough to feel the weight and step toward the window, facing the street. Below, a man stands with a rifle in his arms. The way he holds it says he knows how to use it. He's not nervous. He's not curious. He's just waiting. Another figure loiters near the stable, a third by the water trough. They're not wearing stars, but they're watching the building like they've already been paid. You back away from the glass and glance toward the other window. The smaller one, facing the alley behind the bakery. That one opens without a sound. You slip out and drop hard into the alley, landing crooked on your good leg. The jolt sends fire through the stitched one. You bite down on a curse and limp fast past a rain barrel, keeping low until the stable comes into view. You know you can't go for your horse nothing because he's likely being watched. You find a mule instead. It's tied loose and already saddled. You don't ask whose it is. You ride out of the alley, through the orchard, past the edge of town. No one follows, not right away, and you don't look back to see when they do. You don't ride far that first day. The mule's slow, and your leg screams every time you shift in the saddle. You stop often, always looking over your shoulder, certain someone's following, not because you hear anything, but because it feels like someone should be. It takes half the day just to clear the edge of the hills, the mule wheezing beneath you, like it resents being stolen. By nightfall, there's no one behind you, just open land and your own stinking breath. You tie the mule to a dead mesquite and sleep with your hand on your gun, back against a rock, listening to the wind scrape through the brush like footsteps that never quite arrive. In the morning, you keep riding. The land turns dry and mean, red stone, yellow grass, and gullies carved into the earth like claw marks. You don't know where you're going. Doesn't matter. You just need to be nowhere in particular. Know where someone might ask questions. Know where a poster might hang. You find a stream after 2 days. It's shallow and choked with reeds, but the water is clear enough to drink. You bend over it and catch your reflection. You don't recognize the man looking back. He's hollow-faced, lips cracked, beard patchy and uneven. The left eye looks smaller than the right, like it's slowly retreating from the light. There's dirt along the side of your face you can't remember getting. Blood in the collar of your shirt you don't remember bleeding. You stare at that face for a while. Then you splash it with water and walk away. Days pass, might be weeks, hard to tell anymore. You stop keeping track after the third sunrise, where you don't bother counting how much food you have left. The mule, now officially yours, by circumstance, if not by name, eats weeds and carries your weight without complaint. You think about naming it, but don't. Feels too personal. You stick to the dry paths, high ground, ravines, outcroppings where you can see for miles and still feel like nothing can see you. You build fires only at dusk and put them out before they can smoke. You eat what little you can find, old jerky, stale biscuit crumbs from your coat pocket. Bugs when it comes to that. Beetles are best. Crickets too, if you can catch them. You scavenge saddlebags left behind on abandoned trails. One gives you a tin of beans, another gives you a blanket that smells like mildew and dead dogs, but you wrap yourself in it anyway. A third has bullets that don't fit your gun. Sometimes you talk to the mule. Not full conversations, just murmurs, observations. You narrate your movements out loud, just to fill the space. River bend up ahead. Don't like that cloud. Reckon you taste terrible, but I'll eat you if I have to. The mule never answers. but it listens better than the men you used to ride with. You start naming the vultures. They circle overhead most days, curious and hopeful. You give them old woman names: Agnes, May, Judith. One with a missing feather on her left wing becomes Clara. She follows you for a week straight. You start waving to her each morning like she's a neighbour. She never waves back, but she doesn't fly off either. At night, you lie awake under a blanket of stars and think about the others. You wonder if they made it out of that ambush, if Tanner's alive, if Rabbit ran, if Merritt ever learned to stop flinching when he drew his gun. You picture them in some other gulch, still riding, still breathing, still dangerous. Then you picture them dead, shot down in the dust, buried in shallow graves or not buried at all. You don't know which version feels worse. One morning, you spot boot tracks near the river. Fresh, a pair of them. Heavy heel marks, like someone walking slow, carrying something. Maybe firewood, maybe loot, maybe a body. You stare at the prints for a long time. Then you turn and walk the other way, not because you're afraid, though you are, but because you've seen what happens when people find each other out here. It's never a reunion. It's never mercy. It's always hunger dressed in someone else's skin. Always a man looking for a reason to shoot first. The second night after that, you hear a voice calling out. Faint, male, not close but not far enough to ignore. You don't answer. You bury yourself under the mildew blanket and hold your breath until the voice fades into the wind. Your leg never fully heals. The skin knits, but the ache stays. You walk with a slight drag now, and the skin around the wound pulls tight when you climb. Sometimes it splits. Sometimes you don't bother stopping the bleeding. You wrap it in the same old cloth, stiff with old blood and new. You tell yourself you'll boil it clean one day, but not today. Food runs lower. You find a pine grove with mushrooms and spend an hour convincing yourself they're safe to eat. You chew one, wait, then chew 3 more. You don't get sick, but you do hallucinate a little. A hawk screams overhead and you swear it's saying your name. You don't mention it to the mule. You find a cave once, small and dry with old ash marks on the wall and initials carved into the stone. J.H. 1877. You wonder who he was. You wonder if he ever got out. You sleep there 3 nights, too weak to ride. When you leave, you carve your own initials underneath. One day you come across a shack. You almost don't check it. It's too close to a trail, too obvious, half collapsed, with warped boards and a roof line bent like a broken tooth. Places like that are either empty or occupied by someone worse off than you. You've made it this long by avoiding both, but the sky's turning black with storm clouds. Your leg is flaring again, and the mule is refusing to go any farther. So you circle it twice with your hand on your gun, then nudge the door open with your boot. The smell hits you first: sweat, blood, damp wood, and something rotting slow. Then a voice croaks from the corner. "Is that you?" You don't answer right away. You step inside, slow, your eyes adjusting to the dark. There's a man on the floor under a stained blanket, curled in a nest of old sacks and hay. He's propped against the wall, or maybe the wall's holding him up. His face is sunken and uneven with fever, lips cracked, skin yellow in the lamplight. There's a rifle nearby, but it's leaning against the wall, out of reach. He doesn't look strong enough to lift it anyway. It's Rabbit, or what's left of him. You say his name aloud to be sure, and he gives a broken smile, like he wasn't sure he still had one. "Figured you were dead," he says, and then starts coughing. It doesn't stop for a while. When it does, he spits into a bucket and wipes his mouth with the back of a shaking hand. The cloth falls from his shoulder, and you see the bandages wrapped around his side. Crusted brown, uneven, soaked through. You drop your pack and sit on an overturned crate across from him. He stares at you for a long while, like he's not sure if you're real or a ghost. "You got any whiskey?" he asks. You shake your head. He sighs. "Didn't think so." You ask what happened. He shrugs, then winces like even that motion hurts. South side of San Miguel, he rasps. Old rancher's place. Figured we'd take a few horses, nothing loud. Merritt tripped a wire on the barn door, heard the snap. Next thing I know, they're on us. Texas Rangers, maybe, or just men with nothing to lose. You ask who else was there. He swallows hard. Tanner's gone, shot in the neck. Merritt too, didn't even fire his gun. Just dropped it and ran, caught a round in the back. You ask how he made it out. He smiles again. This one's uglier. Didn't really. Got tagged in the side. Thought it was shallow at first, but it just keeps going wrong. Thought maybe it had stopped bleeding. Then I thought maybe it had stopped stinking, but it's still doing both. He looks down at his hands like they're someone else's. I've been in this shack 3 days, he adds. 4 maybe. Had some beans. Gone now. Had some water. Gone now too. You let him drink from your canteen. He drinks in greedy gulps and thanks you with a wheezy nod. For a while, you sit there without saying much. You don't know what to offer. You can't carry him. You don't have medicine. You ask if he wants you to ride to the next town for help. He barks out a laugh that turns into another coughing fit. You think I want a town doctor? Someone with clean hands and better ideas? He'd take one look at me and ride back for a rope. Night falls fast. The wind outside picks up. You try to patch one of the walls with an old feed sack, but it doesn't help much. The rain comes hard, slamming against the warped boards, like someone wants in. You build a small fire in the hearth using wood you're not sure is dry. It smokes more than it burns, but it gives a little heat. Rabbit curls tighter and mutters something under his breath. You ask what he said. He mumbles again. Poison stew. You think you misheard him, but then he says it again, louder, with a cracked laugh. We thought it was just beans, but Merritt said the smell was off. Tanner didn't care, ate half the pot before saying it tasted like old soap. That's when the boys started puking. You nod slowly, not sure what to make of that. He goes quiet again. Later, he stares into the fire and starts muttering about a boy with no fingers. He held the pistol, all wrong, he whispers. Kept dropping it, not because he was scared, because his hands weren't real, couldn't grip it. You ask if he's talking about Merritt. He doesn't respond. Just coughs again, deep and wet, and then rolls onto his side with a groan. You stay up most of the night. The wind dies down just before dawn, and the rain slows to a whisper against the roof. You poke at the fire until it becomes little more than a red smear in the ashes. You close your eyes once, maybe twice, but never all the way. When the sun comes up, the shack smells worse. Rabbit's not breathing. You check, but you don't need to. His mouth is open slightly, and his chest stays still. There's a smear of dried blood on his lip, and his blanket's pulled up to his chin, like someone tucked him in. Maybe he did it himself. Maybe not. You sit there for a long time, watching the morning light creep across the floorboards. Then you drag him outside. You think about digging with your hands, but realise how poorly that would work. Instead, you pile rocks over the body and call it done. It's the quiet that does it. After Rabbit, after the shack, you ride for miles without hearing another voice. Just the wind, your breath, and the creak of the mule's saddle under you. He limps a little, still favouring that back hoof. You try to stay off it when you ride. Doesn't help much. You don't know where you're going. You stop thinking about names, about rivers or counties or ranges. The last map you had was blood-stained and torn, and it wouldn't matter anyway. The only thing left to navigate by is instinct and hunger. And right now, instinct tells you to find something with food and tracks. You find both at a broken telegraph station, 3 miles off the main road. The roof's collapsed, the wires snapped, and dangling like dead snakes. But the tracks beside it are clean, unbroken, and used. You wait until dusk, crouched in the shadow of the platform, to watch the sun glint off iron rails. Still warm, still active. You wait 3 more days. You eat dried apples that taste like dust. You chew on leather strap to fight the gnawing in your belly. You boil stream water in a tin cup you found buried in rabbit saddlebags. It still smells like beans. You use it anyway. On the third morning you hear it, the whistle, faint, ghostly, like someone crying into the wind. Then the low rumble, like thunder pressed flat against the earth. You stand too fast, nearly trip over your own legs. Your hands tremble as you ready the pistol, checking the chamber again and again, even though you know it's loaded. You count each bullet. 5. Enough, if everything goes right. The mule watches you, his breath clouding faint in the morning chill. You pat his flank once and then take your position beside the telegraph pole, just where the hill curves around, and the train has to slow to take the bend. It doesn't slow enough. It roars past you before you've even raised the gun, a blur of smoke and steel and screaming wheels. Your coat whips around your legs. You shout without meaning to, just noise against the machine. The second car is open-sided. You leap without thinking, land hard on the edge, half slide through the gravel that lines the floor. You lose your hat. You don't care. It's a livestock car, empty but for straw and stink. You stagger to the end, climb onto the ledge, and brace yourself against the cold metal frame. The next car sways ahead, a dark box with its door just barely ajar. You take a breath, step over the gap, and pray the train doesn't jolt. Then you're inside. You meant to hold it up clean, meant to do what you'd seen done before. Raise the gun. Say something gruff. Get the safe. Run. But the first person you see is a clerk, not even a guard, just some bookkeeper, with sleeves rolled to the elbows and spectacles on the tip of his nose. He turns too fast when he hears you. You shout. Your voice cracks. The clerk gasps and grabs something, a dark shape beside the register. You fire. The sound is deafening in the small space. The flash blinds you for half a second. When your eyes adjust, the clerk is on the floor, curled on his side, blood pooling under his ribs. The object in his hand rolls away, clattering softly against the wall. A broom. You stare at it, then at him, then back at the blood. You step forward and crouch beside him, reaching for a pulse you know won't be there. He never even made a sound. Your hands shake as you rifle through the till. There's not much, maybe $6 in assorted coins and paper, a tin of peppermint sticks, and a jar of pickled eggs you knock over by accident. The jar shatters. You cut your hand on the glass as you reach for what's left. You stagger further into the train, one hand wrapped in a dirty handkerchief, the other gripping the gun you didn't need. There's a strong box near the back. You find it by luck, tucked under a bench in a passenger compartment that smells like pipe smoke and oil. You try to lift it. It doesn't budge. Steel. Bolted. Or just too heavy. You try again. You manage to tip it, drag it a few inches, but your arms give out before you can get it to the door. You curse. Loud. Then quiet. You don't want anyone hearing you. But nobody comes. Nobody answers. Nobody saw. Not yet. You take the $6. You take a lunch tin from under one of the seats. Still warm. Still wrapped in a cloth. You don't look to see whose it was. You run. You leap off the train on the next bend, tumble into the brush, land hard on your shoulder, and roll. The revolver flies from your grip. You lose the lunch tin. You crawl back for it on all fours like an animal. You find the bread crushed, the meat gone, the apple intact. You eat it first. You don't cry until later, after you've made it back to the station, after you've mounted up and ridden 3 miles down a dry arroyo, after the adrenaline drains from your chest and leaves you cold and empty, like someone scooped your insides out with a ladle. Then it hits you, not loud, not like a baby, just quiet, helpless shaking. Your shoulders hitch, your mouth makes a sound like a wounded bird. You pull the collar of your coat up and bury your face inside it. That night, you light a fire, small enough not to be seen. You sit by it and stare into the flames. You don't take your boots off. You haven't taken them off in days. Your feet stink. The inside of the leather's going green. You don't care. You fall asleep with the gun on your chest, hand curled around the grip. You dream of the clerk's face, not in pain, not screaming, just surprised, like he couldn't believe you were real. You wake to birdsong, a coyote call in the distance. It starts with tracks, not yours, someone else's, crisp, confident, pressed deep into the damp earth like a signature. You find them not long after the train, a few days into your aimless riding. Just a glance off the trail, but enough to know they're recent, enough to know you're not imagining it. Someone is following you, and they're not trying to hide it. You try to tell yourself it's nothing. Could be anyone. Could be days old. But then the mule picks up its head, like it's heard something, and you catch the faint whistle of a man who doesn't care if he's heard. You stop pretending after that. It's not a posse, not lawmen, not rangers, just one rider. You never see his face, never hear his name, but you see the results. A broken branch where none should be. Boot prints beside a creek you never crossed. A smouldering campfire in a clearing you passed only hours earlier. Still warm to the touch. He's always just behind you, and never far enough. You ride harder. The mule groans beneath you, pushing through scrub and slope, and whatever's left of the trail. The terrain shifts, hills folding into canyons, trees thinning to low shrubs and dead sage. At night, you double back. You walk the mule through stream beds to mask the trail. You bury your campfires and cover your waste. But nothing shakes him. He knows what he's doing, knows your tricks. Maybe he's seen the posters. Maybe he just wants the bounty. Or maybe he doesn't want money at all. Some men just like the hunt. You try to get clever. You climb a ridge and find a narrow overlook. A perfect angle to see the path below. You sit there for hours, the wind cutting through your coat. Your hands stiff around the revolver. You don't eat. You barely breathe. And when you finally see him, a figure in the distance, riding slow and steady with the kind of posture that says he's not worried, you raise the gun and aim for the centre of his chest. Your hands won't stop shaking. You curse under your breath. Try to steady them, but your fingers twitch like puppet strings, held by someone else. You squint down the barrel, count the heartbeats, try to hold it for just a second, and then you fire. The shot cracks through the canyon, misses by yards, ricochets off stone, and sets the mule braying in fright. The rider doesn't flinch. He just stops, looks up, doesn't reach for his gun, doesn't gallop off, just watches. You don't wait to see what he does next. You haul the mule around and ride. The trail's too steep, too narrow. You nearly tumble twice. The revolver slips back into your coat, useless. Your breath tears out of your throat like gravel. Every time the mule lurches, your ribs feel like they're splintering. You ride like that until sunset, then past it, then until the sky's blue-black and the wind cuts so sharp it feels like it's skinning your cheeks. You don't stop. Not even when the mule stumbles and limps and finally slows to a wheezing crawl. You dismount. Lead him by the reins. He's sweating and shuddering. You whisper apologies into his ear. He doesn't respond. Just keeps walking with that mechanical, near-dead rhythm you recognize all too well. By morning, you know it's over. The mule gives out on a flat stretch of dry wash, legs locked, sides heaving, head low. You try coaxing him up, try dragging him, then just crouch beside him and press your forehead to his neck. You stay like that until the sun's fully up and your lips are cracked from the dry. You don't look back when you walk away. You don't have time to mourn. You stumble forward on foot through thorn and dust over flatlands and broken hills. The rider doesn't whistle anymore. He doesn't need to. You can feel him. You don't sleep for more than an hour at a time. You don't eat unless you find something already dead. Your boots crack at the seams and your socks wear through. You don't bother fixing them. You try another ambush, a ledge above a dry arroyo this time. You cover your tracks on the way up. You wait, body curled like a snake, gun across your lap. The sky crawls past in shades of gold and bone. You hear nothing. You see nothing. The silence presses against your chest until it feels like you're being buried. He never comes. You leave the ledge and descend through the rocks, only to find his camp not half a mile away. Fresh coals, a strip of jerky hanging on a stick. He was there. He knew you were waiting. He just walked the other way. You start to feel like you're the one being hunted in a story that already ended. Each night, you sleep lighter. Each morning, your heart pounds the moment you open your eyes like it already knows it's late. You stop drinking full mouthfuls of water. You don't want to hear the canteen go empty. Your lungs rasp. The bullet wound from weeks ago throbs like it remembers pain on your behalf. You begin to see shapes at the edge of vision, silhouettes that vanish when you turn. You hum to yourself just to fill the silence. When you crest a rise one morning and look out over a wide, bone-white flat, you think for a moment you're free. No tracks behind you, no movement below. You descend slowly, cautious, scanning the horizon. Then you see it, a boot print in the clay. Deep, recent, pointing forward. You don't scream, you don't curse. You just close your eyes for a long minute and feel the sun on your face. Then you start walking again. By evening, your legs barely work. The mule's absence is a wound you can't stop picking. Every sound becomes hoofbeats. Every shadow becomes a man with a rifle. You pass an old telegraph pole, wires long gone, leaning like a drunk in the wind. You wonder if it ever carried a message about you. You wonder what name they used. You try to hide under an outcropping of rock. You last maybe an hour before the dream starts again. The whistle, the shadow, the open mouth that never speaks. You wake up cold and clawing at your own chest. Eventually, the sun crests high enough to pull you upright. Not with strength, you lost that days ago, but with necessity. Cold is coming again, the kind that closes in like a noose. You feel it in your fingertips, in the twitch of your jaw when the wind shifts. If you don't find shelter soon, it'll be your last night under open sky. You limp forward, dragging your bad leg slightly behind the other, the joint swollen and stiff in a way that doesn't bode well. You gave up on wrapping it days ago. The mule is gone. The revolver is somewhere in a gully half a mile back. You couldn't carry it and your own body at the same time, so you left the one less likely to keep you alive. It's the smell that draws you first. Not fresh air, not rot, but the stale iron scent of old stone. The kind that seeps from deep places. You follow it up a ridge and into a narrow cleft in the rock, where a wooden frame leans half collapsed against the earth, like a drunk trying to sit up. A mine long abandoned. You pause at the threshold, not out of fear, but something older, a kind of reverence maybe, for places where men went in and never came back. The sun slips behind the ridge as you step inside. Inside it's dry at least, cold but windless. You slip between the broken planks, dragging your bag behind you, and press on until the light fades entirely. There's no need to go deep, just far enough that no one could see you from the ridge. You sit, knees pulled to your chest, and wait for your eyes to adjust. They don't. It's too dark for vision. You learn the shape of the space by feel. There's nothing in the bag but a mouldy blanket, a frozen chunk of stolen bread you can't chew, and 2 tins of beans you've already scraped clean with your fingers. You stack the empty tins by the wall anyway, like they mean something. The mule's harness is still knotted around your shoulder. You keep forgetting it's there. When you finally take it off, your arm tingles for minutes. The cold sets in quickly. Your fingers swell and stiffen. You try rubbing them against your coat, but it doesn't help. Everything is stiff now. The coat, your knees, the joints of your jaw. You sleep that first night in fits, wrapped in your own stink, trying not to shiver because the noise feels dangerous. When you wake, your legs won't move for a full minute. Your lips are cracked. You can't swallow without pain. You think about lighting a fire. You even gather some dried brush from just inside the mine entrance, sticks, old burlap, anything that might catch. But the thought of smoke rising through the roof, or the scent of ash on the air, makes you stop. You can't risk it. A fire would mean warmth, but it would also mean notice, and you're too tired to run anymore. Instead, you chew on leather. Belt straps, boot laces, your own cuff torn off at the wrist and soaked in canteen water until it's soft enough to bite. It doesn't help. You lose a tooth on the third day. You try not to think about it, but the hole it leaves keeps catching your tongue. It feels bigger than it should. You talk to yourself sometimes, or maybe not to yourself, maybe to the figures on the wall. You find them on the fourth day, deeper in the mine. Charcoal faces, dozens of them, drawn on stone in rough lines, some just eyes and mouths, others full portraits, expressions frozen in fear or pain or laughter. You study them in the dark with your hands, tracing the ridges and pits, imagining what they looked like by torchlight. A family maybe, miners, refugees, ghosts. You start assigning them names. Rachel, Tom, the one-eyed man, the smiling child. You tell them stories. Most of them are lies. Some of them are yours. By the end of the week, you start writing too. You don't have ink or chalk or charcoal, but you smear soot on the wall with your fingers. You write your name. At least, you think it's your name. You don't check it against anything. You're not even sure how to spell it anymore. It looks wrong. You add more letters until it fills the space. Then you smear it out. Then you do it again. You don't sleep so much as blink. You wake up unsure if it's morning or midnight. You see stars sometimes, even underground, flickers of white behind your eyelids. Your gums bleed. You spit into the dirt and think the blood looks brighter than it should. You wonder if you're younger than you feel or older than you remember. The rats come later. You hear them first, skittering claws on stone, soft huffs of breath. You wait, you don't move. When one finally gets close, you throw your boot at it. Mistry again later. Eventually, you get lucky. One slips too close and you pin it under your hand, then your knee. You don't feel anything as you crush it. No guilt, no triumph. You bite in while it's still warm. You eat it all, you gnaw the bones, you suck the marrow until it stops tasting like anything. It takes an hour to stop shaking. Not from revulsion, from the energy, from your body remembering what fuel feels like. You throw up half of it later, but that's fine. It means you're still alive enough to reject things. You keep going like that. One rat every few days. A few strips of hide left in your bag. Water from a crack in the mine wall that smells like copper and worms. You don't talk much anymore, even to the faces. You try once and your throat won't open right. The words come out wet. You stop trying. You stop keeping count. One day, or night, it doesn't matter. You wake up cold and can't remember how you got here. You remember the gang vaguely. Some names, the mule, the girl with the needle, but it all feels like someone else's life. A newspaper story, a dream. Your mouth is full of scabs. Your skin itches. You look at your hands and don't know who they belong to. You write on the wall again. This time just a line. You don't know what it says. Your fingers are numb halfway through. You scratch until they bleed. You start seeing shapes in the dark. Not just rats, people. A man with a long rifle, a child with no eyes. You know they aren't real, but that doesn't make them less present. One of them stands in the corner all night, silent, watching. You don't speak to it. You just lie still. Later you try to crawl toward the mine entrance. The light is stronger there. You miss warmth, even if it means risk, but your body doesn't move the way it should. You drag yourself a few yards and collapse. You wake up face down in your own piss and ice. You can't feel your legs. You know what's coming. You've seen it before. In the boy with the thigh wound, in Amos curled up by the fire, in Rabbit's eyes when he saw you bleeding. There's a point where the body stops pretending, where the cold is no longer an enemy, but an invitation. You stop fighting. You arrange your blanket as best you can. It smells like rot and wet fur. You curl your fingers under your arms, press your chin to your chest. You stop blinking. There's nothing to see anyway. You think of a horse, not the mule, not the one you stole, the first one, a real one, big, brown. You remember brushing it after a rainstorm, the smell of wet earth and saddle leather. That might have been real or not. It doesn't matter. You hold on to that image, just that, as the last bit of warmth drains from your body. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Not of redemption, but of a man ground down until he didn't even recognise himself anymore. If you'd like to hear more of these quiet collapses into history's underside, feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with a corner of the past you'd like to see explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.